What is your I dodged a bullet moment? Under bombardment in Baghdad in 2004, a Chinese-made Katyusha rocket landed 30 feet away and blew me up. I stood up, dusted myself off, and discovered I was completely unhurt. As I was marveling at this, I watched another rocket come in. I knew from its parabola that my luck was up and stood rooted to the spot, horrified, as it came down nose first about 5 feet away from me. I've never been so certain that my life was over. It failed to explode. You win. Thread over. Dodged a rocket. Not a bullet. I don't think it qualifies. Besides, he didn't even dodge it. It just failed to explode. Motherfucker stood his ground against death. A girl I went on 2 dates with ended up stabbing her next boyfriend 2 months later. I didn't follow up after 2 dates cause I got a weird vibe. Never been happier about that gut instinct. Kawalker and I dated 2 or 3 times. One day I offer to take her home, and a car pulls up behind me, blocking me in. A guy who looks like a teen Arnold Schwarzenegger gets out. I start freaking. The lady says relax, I got this, and goes to his car and they talk for half an hour. Then he leaves. It was her lunatic roided out bodybuilder ex-boyfriend. When I drop her off at her home, I tell her this ain't working out and leave. She quit the job a few weeks later, and I move on. Years later, I'm back in town. And one of my cousins tells me, remember that chick you dumped years ago? Well, she remembers you, buddy. In fact, she wrote a short story about you in her first book. Seems you are quite an asshole. We only dated 3 times, and I got a whole chapter in a book by an angry post-feminist. Before I moved here, I got stuck in Boston overnight in the heavy rain with nowhere to stay. My phone was dead, so I couldn't call anyone or use the Maps app. And as anyone who's ever been to Boston can attest, the whole city basically shuts down after 2 AM. Unfamiliar with public transport, I got on the last train that I hoped would take me to my friend outside of the city, but at the last second I realized the train was going in the opposite direction. Ended up asking this girl where I was, which she then responded to with, do you not have anywhere to go tonight? Come with me. So I followed her in a daze, not really sure what was happening. She was absolutely gorgeous, so I was sure I was about to get mugged. She took me to her house, blew up an air mattress and let me use her spare phone charger. The next morning I thanked her profusely and offered money, but she just smiled and waved it off. We said our goodbyes and I left. I still don't know her name. TL. Doctor, kindest stranger I've ever met, saved me from sleeping overnight on a bench in the middle of a rainy city. Good story, but I'm going to say, I thought this was going in a much crazier direction. At the time, I did too. But I consider being stuck overnight in the rain in a city with no communication or way out a bullet, which I definitely dodged. Sorry it wasn't crazier. I used to be engaged and made a lot more money than my then fiance. She had a son and we planned on having children together, so I was supportive when she talked to me about quitting her job, New York City teacher, to be a stay-at-home mom. It made a lot of sense. She ended up quitting her job at the end of the year, but a couple of weeks into summer she offhandedly mentions how she wants to look into hiring a full-time babysitter for her son. I asked if she was going back to work in the fall, but she said no. She just wanted someone to watch her son from roughly when I left for work until I came home. I pointed out the whole point of leaving her job to be a stay-at-home mom was to do that very thing. I already paid people to clean the home, do the landscaping, and vacuum the pool while I did most of the cooking. It's not like I expected a whole lot. We ended up fighting a lot about this over the next couple of weeks until we broke off the engagement and broke up altogether. She's still friendly with my friends' wives/girlfriends and I've since learned she married a guy who basically works 24/7 to keep her in a life of luxury. Almost got kidnapped in a mall when I was 5 and separated from my mom. Guy just grabbed my hand and led me to the exit. I was stunned initially, but started screaming when we neared the exit and he panicked and let go. Still freaks me out to think what would have happened if that hadn't deterred him. This reminds me of an experience I have never shared, and I'm not sure ended the way I remember. On a family road trip, when I was in grade school we stopped at a McDonald's somewhere in nowhere, Ohio. I remember being allowed to use the restroom on my own, while my parents ordered. While in the stall an elderly man asked me to let him in. He was very persistent. I definition got bad vibes and tried to convince him to leave, which didn't work. At some point I just froze. He didn't stop and tried to get in. I remember my young mind thinking he was trying to jimmy the lock by sticking his unbuttoned belt through the slit, but honestly it could have been some other thing, flat object, IDK, maybe a shoehorn. I just thought it looked like a belt at the time. I don't remember what happened next, but the memory I have is of a muscular / tall blonde man being thanked for saving me. I do know that no police were contacted. I'm fairly certain I was saved by a random stranger who contacted my parents while the old creep fled, but I have never had the strength to ask. Part of me worries that I suppressed something, but I'm somewhat certain that I haven't. So pretty sure I dodged a bullet. Fuck, now that I have finally put this into words, I guess I should ask my parents. When I was 15 years old I was suffering from dizzy spells and constant tiredness. They figured I had some kind of anemia. I had a blood test done on me and they found an abnormally highly white blood cell count. This usually meant one of 2 death sentences: leukemia or sickle cell anemia. Turns out I had a 1 in a million third option. Genetically I have much denser bones than a normal person. The doctor was suspicious of this when it took such an abnormally long time to get a bone marrow sample. Usually it's done in 5 minutes. It took him nearly 20 to jam the needle into my sternum. Denser bones meant accounted for higher white blood cell count. I was, and remain to do date over 30 years later, perfectly healthy. Ex-husband and I chickened out of buying a house around 2005. Damn, you didn't just dodge a bullet. You dodged a recession. I volunteered for airborne school when I was in the army years ago. On my first official jump in school, I somehow managed flip forwards in my parachute harness and my chute deployed completely fucked up, what we call a cigar roll. This causes to shoot to deploy all rolled up and it gets no air. I free fell for a second before coming to my senses and pulling my reserve. Most terrifying day of my life, and I still had 4 more jumps to get through that week to graduate. What happens if you cigar roll the reserve chute too? Genuinely curious. Can other jumpers help you, or are you just out of luck? Kiss your ass goodbye, pretty much. Generally the heights that you're jumping at aren't high enough for much chance of anyone helping you, though the chances of both chutes failing is pretty tiny. A girl I dated my senior year in college and was absolutely smitten with didn't treat me well and did a really good job of stringing me along while still hooking up with her ex-boyfriend. She's now a 3-time divorced single mom who posts a lot of Minion memes on Facebook. So, you get all of the Minion memes without the cheating? Sounds like a win-win. I was searching my pockets for the keys to the front door of the building I was living in at the time, and a friend who had given me a ride home shouted at me from the car because I had forgotten something inside. The moment I got to the car, part of the stone facade of the building fell exactly where I had been a few seconds prior. Not a story about me, but a friend. He drives trucks for a living, and his job is to visit construction sites and load his truck with their dumpster. One time, while walking on site, a piece of metal fell from the roof of one of the buildings, and it grazed the front of his face. He needed stitches, and has a scar, but boy was he lucky. Even cashed in on the accident. I keep thinking about how the slightest change in his day could have either killed him, or left him completely unscathed. Talk about dodging a bullet. This event happened in the early 90s. I don't know which year exactly, but my country was at war with a neighboring country. Peas. I'm from the Middle East, anyway. One night we were watching TV in our 6th floor apartment and there is a huge glass door next to it. My mom and dad and I were sitting facing the TV. My brother was sitting at an angle on a couch next to the TV, so he had to bend his body to avoid the TV glare and see. We kept telling him, "You are blocking the view, move back." Thank God he didn't listen to us, because at one point a small missile came through the glass door and shattered it to pieces and hit the wall behind our sofa. The whole apartment was in pieces. No one was harmed, but it was traumatizing for my parents and for me and my brother. We had to evacuate the apartment and go live with other relatives for some time. I was fostered as a teenager, and when I turned 15 I went to a sort of youth group for foster kids to hang out, learn life skills, that kind of thing. One day, we'd been out for a trip to the cinema I think, and because social services suck here, they dumped us off in town, rather than take us near our homes. I walk to a crossing, and because there's like no traffic I don't press the button for the lights and just start crossing it, which was odd, because it was 6 PM and usually busy. I get as far as 1 foot off the pavement, and leaning forward to begin walking, when a thought strikes me. I should probably press the button just in case. I lean back, and reach to press it. Right as I do, an ambulance with no lights or siren blasts through at like 50 miles per hour. All this happened in like 1 second. Lean forward, foot out, hold on, lean back, fucking ambulance out to nowhere. This is why I take so long crossing roads. When I was younger I used to skip school. I would hide in the garage till my parents left and then go back in the house. One day I was in there waiting for them to leave and I thought they had already when I heard their footsteps approaching the garage door. This had never ever happened before as they always just got in their cars and ran. Anyway I crept to the door to listen closer, but they started messing with the lock. I ran out the back, the other side of the garage, out into the garden, and into the bushes. My heart was pounding. When about half hour later I dared to look back, I couldn't see anyone. I went inside, and the place was trashed. My parents had left at the normal time. We had been burglarized, and I had stood maybe 6 inches from the burglar on the other side of the door and run for it, except I thought it was one of my parents. A rogue harpoon nicked my arm. If I hadn't moved half a meter to the right, I would have been impaled and probably not be here now. I literally dodged a harpoon. Edit. People apparently don't get shot at with harpoons a lot, so let me explain. I'm 18, and most of my friends are around my age. We live very near the water, and I'm known for being a bit of an adrenaline junkie. We found an old harpoon gun in the woods, and wondered if it was still functional. We hooked up a new gas tank and went over basic firearm safety while reviewing the rule that we shouldn't aim at anything we don't want dead. He with a gun in hand or hands aims it at me and accidentally fires it. I, being a badass, notice my incoming doom and tunnel out of the way. I had been standing upright, and when I rolled, one of the barbs of the harpoon nicked my arm, my inner arm, no less. This is my I almost died story of 2016, until something else happens. Harpoon, the bullets of the sea. My college roommate dodged a bullet fired by me. He took me out shooting for the first time in a field near our school, but didn't really show me proper gun safety or show me how this particular gun worked. He went to set a target back up, and I was messing with the rifle when it went off. It was probably aimed about 5 to 10 degrees away from him. When it went off I still get chills thinking about it, and it was 20 years ago. Edit. Just for clarification 1, I didn't mean to put all the blame on my friend. It was both of our faults in this scenario too. We were firing a lever action rifle, so while he was setting up the target I chambered another round by working the lever, and then for whatever reason I wanted to let the hammer back down, so I held the hammer with my thumb and pulled the trigger. The hammer slipped and still had enough travel in it to fire the round. He should have taught you at least the golden rule of finger off the trigger until you want to shoot before he literally walked in front of you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that bell to turn on notifications, so you'll be sure to know when the next video comes out. Want to watch some more? Check out my other videos. I really do appreciate everyone who helps make these videos possible. And as always, thanks for watching.